Hi, this is Mark. We're going to talk about compliance, one of our favorite topics. I've done a series of videos on Bitcoin. I want to talk just for a few minutes about why maybe your compliance department is being so tough on Bitcoin. It goes back since the inception of Bitcoin. In 2009, when Bitcoin was launched, it really flew under the radar for the first few years. I've looked into this for 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13. For the first 5 years, the network was really small. Bitcoin for that first year, it took a while even to get to a penny or even to prove that it's worth anything. Then in May of that next year, somebody bought pizza with the Bitcoin. In Bitcoin world, it's a famous day. It's celebrated even now. I think it's May 22nd. It's Pizza Day for Bitcoiners. This is the day that Bitcoin really first showed its utility as money. Bitcoin has risen in price ever since, and it really got on the regulators' radar screen in that second 5-year period. What happened was there were criminal enterprises that were using Bitcoin. Now, I'll pause for a minute and say that the same thing that appealed to criminals appeals to everyone using the network. It's a private, permissionless protocol. It's anybody can own Bitcoin. If it doesn't matter what country you're in, it runs on the same network. It's easy to use. And it was immediately identified as a way to transmit money quickly anywhere in the world, but the trade can settle in 10 minutes. Law enforcement around the world seized a bunch of Bitcoin, and all that means is they didn't hack into the network or anything like that. Nobody's ever hacked into the Bitcoin network, but they would make an arrest. They'd put them under pressure. They'd try to get them to cooperate. They'd give them less years in prison. As a result, they surrendered their Bitcoin, which is mainly surrendering your passphrase to get into your Bitcoin. So for the most part, all that Bitcoin that is owned by the US government today, which is supposedly $20 billion, it was all seized in criminal operations. But I don't know, have you ever had clients with $100 million or more? I can tell you, in working with clients like that, what they like about Bitcoin is the same thing, except for nowadays, criminals tend not to use Bitcoin as much, because the other thing about Bitcoin is all the transactions are on the blockchain, and the law enforcement is now tracking the movement of that. So while it's permissionless and they can't stop it, they are starting to get better at tracking it. But back to the affluent ideal clients, let's put it this way. The more affluent the client family that you're dealing with, the more they value privacy. And it's not from government. They could care less about that. They just don't want prying eyes knowing what they're doing. It could be a small business owner that doesn't want their competitors to see what they're doing. Or in many families, it's their own family. They don't want others in their family knowing that they're moving millions of dollars or whatever it is. The only point I'm making at is this very thing that criminals liked about it and then ended up liking less about it because it's on a public blockchain that can be tracked by NSA and others. The affluent love it for that. It's totally private. Nobody in their family knows it's happening. If Uncle Joe wants to give grandkid Tommy $10 million, you could do it in Bitcoin in 10 minutes, no problem. So this whole thing that makes it permissionless and nobody can stop it is what makes it freedom money. That's why a lot of people are attracted to Bitcoin. It's law-abiding people that just prefer to keep their money stuff private. That's all it is. But you can't have it that way and not understand that some people may use it for bad reasons. But that's on them. It's not the fault of Bitcoin. It's not the fault of the network. It's not the fault of anyone but the criminal themselves. Law enforcement's pretty good about catching them in other ways. So back to compliance. Bitcoin was launched in 2009. Somewhere in that next 5 years, the government took a very negative approach to Bitcoin. I remember Obama on TV back when he was president talking about, you don't want You don't want people walking around with a Swiss bank account in their pocket as though that's a bad thing. And what he meant by that was you have this private bank account that nobody knows how much is in there and it's all secret and everything. That's what Swiss banks were for. And that's what he meant. I remember hearing him say that in a speech and thinking, what's wrong with Swiss bank accounts? It's just wealthy people trying to keep their money private. Anyway, the regulators back in the Obama administration launched something that targeted certain industries that they did not like. And there were a lot of things in there, but one of the industries that they flagged was Bitcoin. They didn't like it, but they were pretty hands off, but they didn't like it and they were very vocal about it. Same thing through the first Trump administration. I remember the Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, he said the same thing. He must have been quoting Obama. He said, yeah, Bitcoin, that's just walking around with a Swiss bank account in your pocket. Again, what's wrong with that? The point is, they were negative on this. And then was the Biden administration. This is where it hit full flame. This is where I said the compliance really kicked in. During that Biden administration, they called it Choke Point 2.0. They did all kinds of things to the Bitcoin industry. They debanked venture capitalists who were just trying to build like software to help the Bitcoin network. They would debank them. Somebody from the government would call the bank of a venture capitalist and say, they're working on Bitcoin over at that company. We would hate for us to have to audit you because of them. So the banks would shut their accounts. And this was happening all over the world. They could barely find a bank that would take their business account. And these were big corporations. The head of the SEC during the Biden administration was Gary Gensler. He conducted on Bitcoin a policy that he described regulation through prosecution. So if there was some open source software developer just working on some Bitcoin project, maybe developing a software wallet to hold Bitcoin or something. These are just software people. The Gensler SEC would sue them, take them to court. In the worst case scenario, there's two developers, software developers sitting in prison right now. Actually, I think there's four of them. I think there was two software projects where the two developers on each project separately were arrested, and I think they're still being held today and going to federal court to defend themselves for writing lines of code. But whatever you think about that, it's not a political issue. I'm just explaining the compliance background. So all this was going on in the government during that Biden, the 4 years, and the SEC was coming into broker-dealers. They were asking them, do they have their advisors mentioning Bitcoin very much? And what they, in essence, told them something along the lines of, I don't think you want to get involved with Bitcoin. Our administration is prosecuting all ends of this Bitcoin industry. So broker-dealers get spooked by that kind of talk. They were telling the advisors, don't mention Bitcoin, don't talk about it. That's where I got involved. I got involved in Bitcoin. I started checking around to these big compliance companies because I have lots of contacts in the industry. They were saying, it's different now under the new administration, but honestly, we avoid Bitcoin. We tell our advisors not to even talk about it. Flash forward to today. Bitcoin is fully embraced by the government. The U.S. government has set up a Bitcoin sovereign reserve. We don't know exactly what they're going to make in terms of a Bitcoin investment. It doesn't matter. The Bitcoin network does not ask for special favors from anyone, not from Washington, not from anyone. The Bitcoin network is growing exponentially. They just want to be left alone. It's that whole principle of wealthy people just want to be left alone. Just let us have our Bitcoin. We're doing it for legal purposes. If we're not, go find the evidence and prove we're not, come after us. But affluent people are the fastest growing group of Bitcoin adoption right now. And it is clean money. It's good for the planet in terms of all the energy it takes to protect the Bitcoin network. It's being used primarily environmentally friendly energy production. There's about 8% of the world's energy that's just wasted. The Bitcoin network is very good because they're more profitable if they can get cheap energy. They go in and they get energy at very low prices. They mine the Bitcoin with that energy. The energy is very environmentally friendly. As a matter of fact, it would have been wasted if it wasn't being used by many of these miners. From a regulatory standpoint, now the administration has issued memos. They have a digital assets division of the executive branch now. It's very open art. They see how Bitcoin can be beneficial to the United States and to the world. And they're advocating Bitcoin. It's game on, embracing the Bitcoin network and ecosystem. They are encouraging lots of outside dollars to come into the US to set up Bitcoin mining operations and everything else. It's in the best interest of any country to embrace Bitcoin because there's no stopping this train. This Bitcoin is adopting at an exponential rate, and countries have tried to stop it. Russia, Turkey, many countries have made Bitcoin illegal over the last few years, last 16 years. It's in those areas, those very countries that outlaw Bitcoin. You can look at the activity on the map as far as where in the world is the Bitcoin activity. It's exploding most in the countries where it's not allowed, but it's growing exponentially in the United States. More and more, you're having affluent people come in and ask their financial advisor about it. When I talked to my contacts last year, I was hearing about all this negative compliance. I went to FINRA and I started going through the regulations. Bitcoin is deemed by the Internal Revenue Service as a commodity. So have you ever had a client come in and say, oh, what's your position on gold? Gold's a commodity. And many people refer to Bitcoin as digital gold. So, Bitcoin's used for bad things about as much as gold. It really has nothing to do with the commodity itself. It has to do with how the government treats it. The government can't stop it, but the one thing the government could do is regulate it. And during those last 4 years, when there was a jihad against Bitcoin by the US government, it really hampered miners and they gave them negative tax treatment. That, for example, on miners, if you're mining for Bitcoin, the way they have it now, this is out of the last administration, but the Bitcoin miners pay a tax when they mine the Bitcoin, and then they pay another tax when they sell their Bitcoin. So it's a double taxation situation. That's in the process of getting remedied. Bitcoin just wants to be treated like any other equivalent commodity. That's all they care about. And we are in an environment right now where not only is the adoption massive in the US, but it's growing at a rate where if you have not already, you're going to have people coming in and just asking you about Bitcoin. You have to be careful when you talk about any asset class. But I think as financial advisors, we know where the bright lines are. We can talk, for example, on gold, you can talk about gold ETFs and how they behave, and you can explain this to a client, and you can talk about gold mining stocks. So, you can have a way to have a conversation with a client about gold. Now that Fidelity and BlackRock are all offering Bitcoin exchange-traded funds on the exchanges, this is not a secret anymore. The word has gotten out to the public, and affluent people are wanting to know more about this. When somebody comes and asks one of these two questions, they're going to say, what do you know about Bitcoin? Or they come to you and they drop the bomb and they say, I own some Bitcoin. And then you're finding out about it for the first time, and that's not good. You should help your clients with all their asset classes, at least advise them. And so you can talk about it. You have to know where the bright lines are, but you have to on every asset class. There's no regulation against talking about it. I'll tell you who is affected is if you're an IAR with a big RIA, some operation that you're plugged into, you're going to have to check with that compliance department. And it's like ice thawing out. It has been solid ice for the last 4 years. Compliance departments have been very gun shy to talk about Bitcoin, but keep calling them because it's thawing, and it's thawing very quickly. My contacts say that it's already loosened up dramatically in some of the big RIAs that I am aware of. Same with broker-dealers. Broker-dealers are a little tougher because when you have a Series 7, you can talk. You have to be a little more careful how you talk than, say, if you're an RIA and you're Series 65. But the point I'm getting at is if you're an independent RIA, if you're listening to this, you have your own RIA or you have a really good relationship with whoever the RIA you're plugged into, sit down and talk to them about this, show them this video, help them understand that the regulatory environment is the opposite of negative. No more regulation by prosecution. They've sent around memos confirming that is not the policy of this government. Those days are over. They're embracing Bitcoin. You need to be advising clients on it. And the thing I want to leave you with is this. I get a lot of questions because I focus so much on Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the only cryptocurrency that is deemed money. The government looked at it in the first 100 days of this administration, and they even set up a crypto czar and a whole little branch of the executive branch to look at these digital assets. And their first report said, Bitcoin is money. It's the only decentralized money with no issuer. It's not owned by any country. It's not like the other cryptocurrencies where it's got a president or a board of directors or a marketing department. There's nobody who benefits from this. And another way to say it in our language is there's no one where there's a conflict of interest. It's the only decentralized money without an issuer, which to the government means maybe if it was issued by Russia, we wouldn't like it. Maybe if it was issued by China, we wouldn't like it. But because it has no issuer, we love it. It has no national borders and particularly no conflicts of interest. But the part I'm going to leave you with is the administration is in the process of regulating through clear rules. What the industry needs and what the industry wants is clear guidance, what the industry calls regulatory clarity about cryptocurrency. So what is being proposed, and I just want to educate you on this so that you can understand where the other cryptocurrencies fit in. There are 4 classes that are being proposed as far as cryptocurrencies in general. The first of the 4 is a token. A token is just something representing something else. There are tokens set up that are pegged to the dollar. There's one called Tether. There's several that are tied to the dollar. And whenever anybody buys that USD token, they have billions of dollars of people all over the world that have bought this cryptocurrency that is represented by US dollar tokens. For every coin you have, it's worth US dollars. It's tied to the dollar. And then what the company does, backing this coin, they go buy government bonds to back their currency so that it's legit. Think about that. We have 37 trillion in debt in this country, and we need to sell our bonds. If we don't sell our bonds, we will go bankrupt. We have all this debt and all the bonds in the US government keep maturing. So here you have this USD token, this company that was in the British Virgin Islands. I think they moved their headquarters to El Salvador, but whatever, they're not in the US. They are buying billions of dollars of government bonds, and it's been tough selling government bonds. The US dollar has been going down if you track the DXY. Since I was licensed back in the 80s, the DXY is the dollar pegged against 6 other foreign currencies, and it's just been declining for the whole time I've been in this business, 40 years. But a token could represent a share of Apple stock. A token could represent shares of any company. And so you're going to start seeing companies issue tokens tied to securities. And the industry is going to have to deal with that because if you can sell Apple stock, you can sell tokens for Apple stock. As a matter of fact, there's a money manager out of Philadelphia that's doing tokenized portfolios. So you'll see more of this coming. So tokens. The second form of crypto is actually a security. So you have a lot of tokens out there and they bill themselves as being, hey, we're just like Bitcoin, but better. And the problem is they are not decentralized. They have boards of directors. They have people, what we would call issuers, therefore, that have a conflict of interest. You have to watch what they say. And if they're out there soliciting people to buy their coins because you'll make money with it, or they have some conflict of interest that they profit from this whole enterprise, then it's a security. They need to go through the process with the SEC, register their coin as a security. And once they've gone through the process, now it's a security. Now you're licensed to talk about it. And I looked at all these cryptocurrencies that I could find, and I just don't see the utility for them. But Bitcoin is massively more secure. Like everything about it, the security, the market cap, the volume, liquidity, everything. It's like there's Bitcoin, and then the number 2 bar in the bar chart, you can't even see it. It's so far down. So you have a security. The third type is a currency. You might have some yet to be determined coin that's deemed to be legal tender. For example, those US dollar tokens, they see actually the US dollar tokens as a bridge to help people buy Bitcoin. It was one of the original thoughts of these USD tokens. What it ends up being is you can buy them on a mobile device, on Cash App or something. If you're a cab driver in Istanbul, or you're a hotel clerk in Madrid, or you could be anywhere. You could be in Dominican Republic and you're a plumber. You could get on your phone, download Cash App or some such app, and you could buy US dollar tokens right then and there. Of course, you could buy Bitcoin on that same app, but a lot of these people have never heard of Bitcoin. Think about it. We have countries all over the world. A lot of these people don't have bank accounts. They're the unbanked, but they can buy US dollar tokens. These US dollar tokens are trying to get very friendly with the US government. They've agreed to be regulated by the US government. There's going to be a relationship between the US dollar tokens, and a lot of people see people around the world who want to get out of their local currency because their local currency is inflating at 35% per year or something. So they get paid, they want to go on their mobile device, get into something. US dollars, that's the strongest currency on earth, and it is, so they buy the US dollar. That's probably better than their local currency, but the point of these USD token companies is eventually they'll want Bitcoin because the US dollar's doing the same thing all these other currencies are doing by deflating the currency. They're just doing it slower. I call the US dollar, which, I'm American, I love the country, but the US dollar is the cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry hamper. They're all dirty laundry, all these currencies around the world. And then you have Bitcoin with a fixed supply. It's never going to be more than the fixed supply of 21 million Bitcoin, and that's why it's rising against other currencies. So you have tokens, security, currency, and then the final one is commodity. Some of these cryptocurrencies might be commodities. Currently, there's only one that is deemed a commodity. It's Bitcoin. The US government said it's a commodity. It's taxed by the IRS as a commodity. It's gone through all the channels, and this was 10 years ago. The government has looked at all these cryptocurrencies, and they have said out loud, the only one currently that is considered a commodity because it's decentralized with no issuer is Bitcoin. So those are the 4 categories. You need to know that because a lot of these, when they do get the regulatory clarity, a lot of these cryptocurrencies are going to go through the proper process. Some of them are going to be securities. You'll need to know about it as a financial advisor. There is another category of coin that I didn't mention. It's a meme coin. I didn't mention it because they're almost a joke. You have the Trump coin and the Melania coin and the fart coin and all these different meme coins that they're collectibles. They're not really meant to be money or anything. It's like a souvenir. You buy it because you're a fan or whatever. It's like when I was a kid, I had baseball cards, and flash forward to my daughter's generation, they had Pokemon cards and Beanie Babies, all these collectibles and whatever. So the meme coins would be another category, but I don't think they have any place in a financial advisor's life unless you have a single client that has a huge collection of something that ultimately ends up being worth a lot of money. That's all I wanted to cover. From a compliance standpoint, if you're an independent RIA, you need to jump on this fast. I predict that within the next few years, you're going to get clients coming in with those 2 questions. What can you tell me about Bitcoin? And I own some Bitcoin. What do I do now? Those are the 2 questions you need to be able to answer. And my divine mission is to get our industry off the dime and learn this fast, because there's nothing stopping this train. It's going to happen with you or without you. And with you, if you can answer these questions, there's a whole generation of Bitcoin millionaires coming up through the next generation. I've met many of them, maybe a plumber or a pipe fitter, or usually it's a working class person, and they say, oh, yeah, a friend of mine said buy some Bitcoin. And so I put $2,000 in Bitcoin 5 years ago, and now it's worth $3 million. You're going to come across these stories more and more. The adoption rate is exploding. And if you can't answer their questions about Bitcoin, or if you don't know how this complex network works so that you can harness it for the planning properties that are there, then you're missing the boat. It's sink or swim. I encourage you to commit to putting in 100 hours over the next year, just learning Bitcoin. And if you would do it with me, come to themarkofmastery.com. I'm doing a lot of videos on every aspect of Bitcoin as it relates to financial advisors. We'd love for you to join us over there, and I'd like to help you on your journey learning about Bitcoin. We'll see you in the next video.